You have to be really intentional about putting a team together.
Crawled out of the pod and started screaming. How good is Joey Bosa?
Herbert, rolling, looking, throwing, end zone, touchdown, intercepted. Derwin James. Derwin was there.
You got to be on a mission every day in the NFL. But even more than that, you got to be on a mission together.
Great hands, Keenan Allen.
The Los Angeles Chargers select Rashawn Slater.
Asante Samuel Jr.
Stop! Oh, I'm stopping y'all boys. I can't catch it.
Intercepted. Picked up by Michael Davis.
Explosion, explosiveness from Eckler.
There's Murphy. Boy, he blew that up, didn't he?
It is picked off. Nasir Adderley. 50-50 ball is 100%. Mike Williams.
Ochena, Nuances. And that will end it.
Time to bolt up.
What is going on, everyone? Chargers Unleashed. Jake, I just jumped the gun. Do you want to give an intro for us?
I mean, hey, I was going to let you run with it, man, but...
Got excited.
Run with it. Let's go.
Yeah.
Hey, it is what it is, man. Fine, I'll take the reins back. Welcome to another edition of Chargers Unleashed. Jake Hefner and Dan Wolkenstein and Ryan Dyrud from the LAFB Network. If you are joining us live on our YouTube channel, make sure to like and subscribe to help this channel grow, as we will be bringing you content throughout the season. And of course, this show is being brought to you by Charger Bolt Family, Manscaped, and UFC Fit. Make sure you go to use the promo code LAFB20 to get 20% off your next purchase on Manscaped. Go to manscaped.com for more details. Gentlemen, it has been a long day, obviously, but how are we doing? How's it going? Let's talk some football.
Ryan, I'll let you go first. How you doing, buddy?
Yeah, what's up, guys? Excited to talk some Chargers ball. It's nice to not have to run the show. So I can just sit back and be a guest and let you guys do your thing, and I'll just chime in when I want. It's kind of nice.
You know, it was Dan was really eager to run the show today. So I was going to let him run with it, but
yeah.
Get out of here. We are not doing this again. What's up, boys and girls, men and women of all ages? Welcome to Chargers Unleashed. Again, you can find us on YouTube, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. If this is your first time viewing or listening, thank you so much for listening or viewing. Hope we have a fun time with us today. This is now live show number 3, Jake, and we got some stuff to talk about today. We had Chargers Unleashed, LAFB Network in the house at training camp. We get to talk about all things Joshua Palmer. We get to talk Derwin James, Keenan Allen. There's all kinds of stuff that we can start with on this. But before we start any of that, listeners, viewers, if you have any questions, comments, topics you'd like us to discuss, use the comments. Let's have some fun with this. We're all about being engaging. Don't be a stranger. Jake, so you and I had the luxury of actually going to Chargers training camp today. And Ryan, you got to do this from afar. 5,000-foot view. Like to start off high level. Takeaways. What do you guys got so far?
You know, today's practice was interesting. The bulk of it was mainly special teams play. You had a number of different highlights throughout the day, more so on the defensive side of the ball for certain guys standing out. Wide receivers definitely had their moments, Keenan Allen being one of them, Josh Palmer being another. You definitely had some, let's just say Joey Bosa had his good moments today on certain offensive linemen. And you know what? I'm not going to even bother to take this moment away from Ryan as he has been on the Proehl Express, as he calls it. But Proehl had another fantastic practice today. So much to dig into. Ryan, I'll turn it over to you.
All aboard, baby. Everyone needs to jump on the Proehl Express, as he will be your wide receiver 6, your starting kick and punt returner. Just continues to shine. I was not there today, so I got to live vicariously through the two of you and your coverage of it amongst other Chargers, writers and podcasters. So I did not get to see it live with my eyes, but good to hear he's still showing out. We're seeing, when we first jumped on, the three of us, Dan and I were at Brewery X, and we were day one of camp, and we immediately brought up how Proehl was stood out and how he just looked comfortable catching kicks and punts. And little by little, all of a sudden, all the Chargers beat writers and other podcasters are starting to chime in saying how good he looks. And it's like, okay, you heard it here first. And it's good to see that he is really making a name for himself. So wasn't there today, but it's good to hear he was showing out again today, fellas.
Oh, man. Austin Proehl was definitely showing out today. He was having some fun. And Ryan, when you and I were first talking about him that day, and Jake, you and I talked about it prior to first day of training camp when you were talking about the position battles. Austin Proehl, for him to make this team, obviously he needs to be able to make plays. But more importantly is he has to impact special teams. And day one, Ron and I both looked at each other after like 5 snaps that he gets, and all of a sudden we looked at ourselves, he looks awfully comfortable, more so than anybody else. And Ryan, you are a fellow kick returner yourself. You know a thing or two about this.
Yeah.
There's just something about it. Just natural, right?
Yeah. I like to pretend I know what I'm talking about, but no, you can tell when someone's comfortable. We've said it probably a bunch now. So for anyone hearing this as a repeat, but just watch if you're at practice or during games or like at FanFest on Sunday or first preseason game on next Saturday, which I will be at. Rams Chargers, going to be a blast at SoFi. But just watch whoever the returner is before they catch it. You can watch them track the ball and just how comfortable they look. And Proehl just looks comfortable. He just looks good. So love to see it.
Yep. Shout out real quick. So we had fun at this training camp, Jake and I, and we got to see all kinds of folks from all different walks of life. We just got to see some of the really, really cool Bolt fam, friends of the show. We got to see shout out Tyler Lawrence from LAC Shock Therapy. I believe this is Tyler Lawrence who's talking to us. He's also a fellow beat writer for LA Football Network.
Don't forget about the other Tyler.
Oh, yeah. And Tyler Schoen from Guilty as Charged podcast. We got to hang out with him for a bit. There were some podcasts brewing there, and it was kind of fun. All three of us all kind of talking about things, getting some takeaways. Jake, did you see what Ryan was talking about in terms of Proehl's comfortability?
Dude, it looks effortless for him out there, whether it was through special teams drills today or when he was out there running wide receiver routes. And I tweeted it earlier today. He's going to make it very difficult for the coaches not to cut him come the first week of the season. He's making a case, it seems, every practice now. I still don't see an influx of reps from either Joe Reed or KJ Hill. He's just been a great surprise for this wide receiver stable, and something that we probably weren't expecting, because we expected to see who was going to really win out this battle, considering that we didn't see much from either Reed or Hill last year. And we expected at least one of those guys to step up. And now look at where we are now with Austin Proehl. And it's a great surprise. And to see him move out on the field and talk about the shiftiness, and Dan, some of the comparisons that you were making, if they were to use him in certain ways in the offense, yeah, it'd be a great addition to round out this wide receiving core, along with having him obviously returning kicks on special teams.
Yeah. So when Jake and I talked about on our position battles episode for wide receivers, if you haven't had a chance to go listen to it, go check it out. We talked about Austin Proehl as being a dark horse to make this team. And we saw him as a Julian Edelman, Wes Welker type, the one who has those annoying 5-yard receptions that just move the chains. That's kind of the role, the wiggle at the top of the route and the bottom of the route to kind of get that chain moving. That's where I see Austin Proehl making an impact on offense, let alone all the special team stuff. I think this guy's making the team. I don't think there's a question right now, but again, that's why we do this for more than just 8 days. We got a lot more time. So real quick, I feel like let's set the stage for this. We've got the main topics I believe we should probably talk about today. And Jake, Ryan, tell me if I'm missing anything. We've got Joey Bosa truck sticking an offensive lineman. We've got Josh Palmer with the sweet moves. Asante Samuel Jr. is catching vibes, looking very good. We talked about Austin Proehl already. Mike Williams showed out pretty good today. We got to talk about him. Any other big storylines?
Let's not forget the battle between Keenan Allen and Derwin James. Just another daily iron sharpening iron battle between these two.
Yep.
Totally.
And then lastly, what's the opposite of iron sharpening iron? Because that's what our special teams is at this point.
Oh.
So we got to talk about special teams. Still an issue. And the way this training camp ended was fitting for what this team is looking to build on and improve for special teams.
Man.
Lovely.
So, Jake,
Nice
take us
season.
away. You said Derwin James, Keenan Allen, we had to talk about. The floor is yours, my friend.
You just can't emphasize this enough. You always think that as much as we talk about Derwin James on this show, that you think like, okay, we're just going to keep repeating ourselves and it's going to eventually get stale. But the truth is it doesn't. It really doesn't, especially when you get to see Derwin go up against Keenan Allen like they did today in wide receiver DB drills. And the best part about it is that one really didn't dominate the other. They both had their moments. So Keenan Allen on the first rep, he got his. And on the second rep, Derwin on the very far part of the sidelines cut right in front of Keenan and had a nice interception before that. So these two were just constantly battling one another. You hear them talk about each other after practice on how one betters the other. But to just see outside of even when Derwin's out on the field running his drills, you see him getting hyped up for guys like Asante Samuel Jr. You see him flying through the air, giving him chest bumps. You see the leadership and the emotion that this team did not have when he wasn't on the field last year. So outside of what he's going to be as obviously a playmaker, but that shot of adrenaline to the arm to this locker room, you just can't talk about that enough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Joe Lombardi said in an interview after practice that after being around him now for how long he's been with the team, he would bet on him against anybody, and that's the OC who's the coach of Keenan Allen, saying he would bet on Derwin James against anyone. And that's no shade at Keenan Allen. That's just showing how good Derwin is and the fact that he can do literally anything. So time to put this guy in bubble wrap, shut it down for camp, and let's just get him ready for week 1 against Washington.
Yes, sir.
Jake, you and I talked about it. Derwin James makes Keenan Allen look ordinary. And if you think about that, there are not many players in the NFL on defense that can say that. Keenan Allen is elite and is always open unless he is playing against Derwin James. So, for example, today, you mentioned it, one-on-one. One of them was an interception. Then he got the better of him for a little slant route, which honestly, Derwin James doesn't really have a chance at that because that's Keenan Allen's all day. Mm-hmm. Those two guys, iron sharpening iron, man, super fun. And yes, Derwin James, maybe this is a good segue. Asante Samuel Jr., both Florida State, both have swag for days. Asante Samuel Jr., we started talking about it early on at the end of last week, starting to kind of get his feet wet, starting to kind of get some grooves going. And man, for those who were not there or have seen video, he was all over the place today. On one-on-ones, he was strapping everyone. And he got to the point where he was making plays. Derwin James comes and chest bumps him off the sidelines, runs out to him just to do it. I mean, Asante Samuel Jr. looked very good. And he looked all of the CB 1-2 outside corner type, shut down Revis Island type. It was fun to see your corner that you drafted in the second round, who folks were so hyped, show out the way he was against all sizes of wide receivers. He's going up against Josh Palmer. He was going up against tight ends. He's going up against, I believe it was Mike Williams as well. Did great. We've got a gem on our hands with this one.
Yeah, I heard.
Yeah. Go ahead, Ryan.
I was just going to say, I heard he had a great practice from you guys and so excited to see him. We all knew it was just going to take some time. I mean, Brandon Staley said many times they're throwing the kitchen sink at him in terms of the playbook to learn literally every position in the secondary. So it was just going to take some time to really have it sink in and not have to think when you're on the field and just be able to play fluidly like he does. So, 8 days in, it's looked like it's already clicking. And Brandon Faison, I believe, was out today. You guys can obviously confirm that or not, but he was out. So ASJ's seizing his opportunity. And if, Gatorade was made at the University of Florida, they must have Swaggerade down at Florida State when Jalen Ramsey, Derwin James, and ASJ. So got to get my dad joke in there real quick.
Man, it's, what it is? It's
Swaggerade.
the first rep seeing him going up against again on one-on-ones, and it was against Trey McKitty. And again, I owned up to this. At first, I thought it was Donald Parham, but it was actually that was the first rep prior to this. But so,
how dare you make a mistake, Jake?
How dare I? How dare I make a mistake when their jerseys are all rolled up and their pads up here, and you can't quite tell who's got the numbers on. But anywho, anyway, we're still talking about a disparity between a guy who's 6'5" and a guy who's 5'10". And Samuel broke on the ball, came up right behind him, and went right for the ball and broke up the pass. And it was beautiful. And then the next drill came out, and it was Asante Samuel versus Joe Reed this time. Same quick slant end round, and he came around and still, again, batted the ball out. So he went 2 for 2 on those drills. And again, Dan, is what you were saying, when the defense was out there on their 7-on-7s or 11-on-11 drills that they were running, he was making plays and he was talking, he was yelling. He already has that swagger about him on the team. And when you're playing defensive back, you have to have a level of swagger to you and confidence to you. But to have that in him already and to see these type of plays being made, got to feel good about it.
Yeah, it was something to see. I loved watching Asante Samuel Jr., someone who actually kind of had a quiet day today. I didn't hear a lot about Nasir Adderley. We'll talk about secondary as a whole. Nasir Adderley, I didn't see much from him today. Alohi Gilman actually showed out. He had a few good plays, few pass breakups. Saw one diving pass breakup that looked very similar to what Drew Tranquil did against Austin Eckler, I believe, earlier last week in training camp. Chris Harris Jr. Did have a few plays where he got beat by the offense. Otherwise, the secondary looked good. I mean, Derwin James is all over the place, both on 7-on-7, 11-on-11. And I mean, 1-on-1, the guy's just a beast. Question came in. Ryan, I'm going to let you answer this one. So we got a question from Jorge Rodriguez or George, but I'm going to guess it's Jorge. Safe to say Joe Reed isn't making the team. Would you say that's safe to say? What percentage chance does Joe Reed have at making the team right now?
I mean, right now, 8 days in. Again, we want to emphasize that because things can change, but I would say like 10%. I mean, and that 10% is just because of his draft selection last year, but this is a new coaching staff, so they have no ties to the draft selections from last year. But from every day I've been at, obviously he's doing nothing on special teams. I said I don't know if he did this today or not, but his one special teams role has been on punt team. He's been like the H-back, the snap man. That's essentially like the guy that calls out the snap and the protection. But anyone can really do that as long as you have the right. Mark Webb, I think, was also doing that. So he hasn't done any return stuff, and he is running with the 3s and 4s. I talked about last camp or last, what is today? Fridays when I was there, Wednesday. I don't know. This whole week's blending together, but whenever I was there, position groupings, and this is not the end all be all, but a lot of times you can see some stuff from your position groupings. So when the receivers run certain drills, you have Herbert and Chase Daniel on one side, and you have Stick and now KJ Castile on the other side, or vice versa. And usually the receiver groupings will stay with those two quarterbacks for their 3 routes each or whatever it is. And on Wednesday, it was Mike Williams, it was Keenan Allen, it was Josh Palmer, it was Jalen Guyton, and it was Austin Proehl. And on the other side, you had Jason Moore, you had KJ Hill, you had Joe Reed. So again, I don't want to make too much of that because that's just, running individual drills against air. But sometimes you can see stuff from those position groupings, who's running with who. And when you have all your starters on one, kind of tells you something. And Joe Reed hasn't done a ton. I don't think he's looked like bad by any means, but he just hasn't shown out. I don't know if you guys saw anything different today.
Didn't see anything different today, but Ryan, just to inflex on that a little bit, I mean, what do you think that is? Because, again, it seems like we keep talking about the same thing as it regards to Joe Reed every single day. And again, we're talking about a guy who, as a senior, averaged 33.2 yards per return, had 796 yards per return. Mm-hmm. And that's what we believe that we originally had drafted him for, to be either, the return specialist, or we were going to use him more as a gadget player, but definitely at least getting him somewhat involved, whether it's on special teams or offense a little bit more. So is it so much? Obviously, I'm sure Austin Proehl has a lot to do with this, but I mean, from what you've taken away, I mean, what's one of the biggest reasons that you believe that he's been essentially losing snaps in practice and not getting these opportunities?
It's a great question, Jake, and I don't know. I mean, not being behind closed doors, I don't know if it's something that he doesn't want to do, or if the team wants to see him make a bigger leap on the offense. They don't want him to be focusing on special teams, because it is weird that he's not even taking like reps returning. Like he's not even in the rotation back there. They had Tyron Johnson back there, who I don't think he's going to do that at all, especially now that he's kind of, cemented himself as wide receiver 3 or 4. So it's interesting. I just don't know if this team and this new special teams coach just envision a different role of what they want in the return game, and they want him to focus more, or if literally just in OTAs or stuff they've done in the past, he didn't look good, so they moved on quickly. But I don't have a true answer, not being behind, but yeah, I don't know if it could even be, I'm not saying this is it, but it could even be him saying like, I'd rather focus on receiver and I don't want to do returns. I don't want that to be my arc of my NFL career, which we've all said, I think that's what he needs to do to make this team. But I don't know. It's very interesting. That's for sure.
It's weird. And Jake and I were talking about this offline. You're hearing Austin Proehl's name all the time. He splashes every camp, it feels like. And today, immediately, he's taking snaps. I think he caught it felt like 15 catches. I know it wasn't that, but it felt like that. You just don't hear Joe Reed or KJ Hill. You just don't hear their names. And I don't know if that's Austin Proehl has just kept them on the sideline because he has been that good, or if it's something that those guys are doing that is that, I won't say bad, but that is just not there yet. It's pretty telling that we're not seeing either of them two really much as like a focal point whenever any of like the actual offense versus defense, like 7-on-7, 11-on-11 comes up. It's just, even today, there was a route specifically for Proehl up the seams. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see kind of how this shapes up. And so to answer the question, Ryan says 10% Joe Reed makes this team as of today. Jake, what would you put that, higher or lower than 10%? As of today, again, asterisk.
A lot can change after a preseason game, and when you have a truncated preseason the way we do now with only 3 games, it's going to make things a lot tougher to evaluate, because your snaps are basically, they're cut by an entire game, and especially for guys like Joe Reed now who look like they're on the outside looking in and possibly, being a fringe cut player at this point. I mean, it's still early. We haven't played any preseason games yet, but all indications are, as Ryan said, 8 days in. I'll go even worse because nothing's improved. I'll say 5% now.
Okay. Yeah. Shout out Tyler Schoon from Guilty as Charged. By the way, he was out there with us at camp. He puts in a comment where he believes, and actually I was talking to somebody else about this too today, not necessarily about Joe Reed, but Tyler was saying that he feels that they might not be showing us everything right now. Yes. And so maybe we're not seeing the gadgetry that we would normally expect from Joe Reed because they're just not letting us see it yet.
Yeah.
Do we think that there's a chance that they're just hiding a bunch of stuff from us and waiting until like after practice is over to do walkthroughs, kind of doing their own thing? Is that something that we might need to just brace for, that there may be a surprise? Nope, Joe Reed's more than fine. We're just not showing you because he's kind of our Swiss Army knife that we're not going to tell you.
Yeah, 100% it could be that, especially with gadgetry plays. You're not really going to run those kind of trick plays, or if you're looking for, to utilize Joe Reed in a gadget role in that circumstance, you're going to keep everything very vanilla to get the repetitions in, obviously, to get everybody in a rhythm. So Tyler's right in that circumstance. So I think that's one of the reasons why we haven't seen those plays implemented, but still to not even see him in a kick return aspect, which is what he was fantastic at college, is still just perplexing to me. But no, Tyler's right on the money on that way of thinking.
Yeah, I agree too. I think it's absolutely, they may not be showing us, but to me, those 2 to 3 plays a game are not enough to keep a 6th or 7th receiver on the roster. So they may be hiding that, and that's what they see him as. But is that enough to keep him on the in the roster? And one other thing, again, I like deep diving into these little things, these little nuances in the background to look at.
Go into the deep end. I like this.
It can really tell you things sometimes, and coaches notice it for sure. When the guys are not in the play, so if they're running 7-on-7 drills or 11-on-11 drills, look for these are fringe players, not the star guy, not Keenan and Mike, who know they're safe. Look at the fringe players and look if they have their helmet on or off. So the guys that are usually, okay, I'm not in right now, I'm going to take my helmet off, relax, chat. There's been times, I've seen a few times where the packages are not correct, the personnel packages may not be correct. Coach is calling for a player. Guess who has their helmet on every time and is out there right away? Austin Proehl. Jason Moore's been doing it a bunch. I've seen KJ Hill, I've seen Joe Reed with helmets off, kind of hanging out. These are little things that coaches noticed. It's like, this guy wants to make this team. This guy, it's a small little minute detail, but maybe he just doesn't care as much. So those are little things that I look for. And if you're at camp, anyone out there watching, look for those guys on the sidelines and see what they're doing when they're not actually in the action.
So we're going to sprinkle in some not so good topics with some of the good that we've seen at training camp. So let's put in one of the not so good things that we have seen so far, and let's talk about special teams. Since we were talking about Austin Proehl, KJ Hill, Joe Reed, I don't think I have ever heard of, at least on the Chargers side, a year in which I've seen this much work on special teams consistently, day after day after day. Today was no different. Jake, you and I were there. We saw, I don't know, probably 20, 30, 40 catches off of punts. Field goal unit goes out. We've definitely saw some misses. And it was not a good day for the kicking unit. And then to end it, I don't know if you saw this, Ryan, to end it, they were doing field goals. I want to say, I forget who it was I was kicking. They went for a long one to end practice. I want to say it was a 51, 52-yarder. I don't think it went 30 yards. It was bad. And literally, that's when practice ended. And Jake and I looked at each other. We're like, well, that's fitting.
We had Tyler sitting next to us, and he's like, no, that had to have gone off someone's hand, right? I mean, the thing only flew 10 yards in the air. That had to have gone off someone's hand, right? Or like, no, that just ducked right in the air.
No, I filmed it. And I went back and I'm like, that had to have been tipped. Nope.
Do you remember who the kicker was?
Tristan, I believe, kicked that one.
Because I don't think Kessman kicked today, from what I heard. You guys would know obviously better, but
I didn't see him kick. I know Badgley was kicking today, but I believe it was Tristan who made that last, or not made, but who displaced the last kick. Mm-hmm. Yes.
We call it the old duff shot in golf terms. So it must have kicked the ground first.
Yeah, but I was saying, I bet you Brandon Staley loved ending it on that to like just piss off everybody on the team. Like that's what we're gonna end this on. Put a sour taste in their mouth for the next day. Hopefully, who knows? So before we go any further with special teams, Timothy wants to make sure that we remember that we are all just guessing, which is absolutely true. Mm-hmm. None of us know what's happening behind the scenes. None of us work for the Chargers. But based on all of the evidence that we have seen so far and all the camps that we have been to, this is what it feels like. It looks like, unless there's some magic coming out of the hat, Austin Proehl has won this wide receiver 6 job until someone points to us otherwise. So yes, Timothy, you're right. Everyone is giving educated guesses, but that's all we have at this point. But thank you, and thanks for tuning in. So on that note, Jake, special teams was not the greatest. We heard some rumblings today, and I think we heard some people talk about it at the last camp. Justin Herbert, I would say, was less than perfect today. And again, it's hard to follow up an offensive rookie of the year performance and expect anything but that during practice. And I'll set it up this way, Jake. We had Chris Harry on with us a while back, and he said, on this team, there are gamers, and they are just winners. You know, Keenan Allen is a winner. Derwin James, Joey Bosa, they're winners. Justin Herbert is a winner. I don't necessarily put much stock at all in what I see at training camp. Has he been perfect? No. Has he overshot, undershot some folks? Yes. Do you see that being big deal, no deal, or a little deal?
I see it kind of a little deal, but I think there's a reasoning for that. And it kind of goes back to special teams, because special teams today during practice took up a bulk of the practice. I didn't even feel that Justin Herbert, when they brought him out for 7-on-7s, whether it was for Herbert, for Daniel, for Stick, even for Costello, that there was barely any of those 7-on-7 drills. Like, they never really gotten a chance to get in a rhythm. For the 3 that Herbert came out for, what was it? It was, I can't remember where his first pass went, but his second pass would have easily been a sack from Tillery. I think they credited Tillery on that. And the third pass, it was just Herbert put way too much air on it on the left side of the field and overthrew his receiver. And then literally they rotated. Then it was Chase Daniel's turn at that point. And then literally they just cycled through all 4 quarterbacks, did those drills, and then they moved him again. So I don't know how much stock you want to put into it, but I don't think that they're I don't think that there's been enough offensive reps just for these guys to get in a rhythm. Obviously, is Justin Herbert looking bad? Absolutely not. I wouldn't go as far as to say that. But today wasn't his best day. He had some inconsistencies, and that's going to happen, especially for a guy who's still adjusting to a new coach and a new offensive scheme. So these little things are going to happen, but you just wish that I would have wished, as someone watching the practice, to say to myself, "But that's it? You're only going to let him have those 3 reps and then move on to the next one?" Like, okay, I'd like to see him again just so he can feel a little bit more confident in himself after this practice. But that didn't end up happening. So, yeah, I'll just say Justin Herbert had an inconsistent practice today. Not the worst. Didn't look terrible. But today was not his best day. He has put up better days.
Yeah, Ryan, there are some training camps that you pay money to see. If folks drove 500 miles to come see training camp today and we're expecting the first team offense and defense, they were wildly underwhelmed. I'll tell you that much. Yeah. But that doesn't mean there wasn't a ton going out there. And there was a lot of matchups that you saw, especially with like the 2s and 3s that were super intriguing. And Tyler Lawrence from LA Shock Therapy has a good point. The focus, and I actually agree with this, the focus on today, it felt like was the depth. It felt like it was not. I mean, I think during the end of the training camp, when it was all full 11 on 11, offense 3 and out, and they were done. We saw 3 plays of the ones on both offense and defense. And me personally, I was like, please, thank you. No one's injured. Call today. Cool. But you saw a lot going after that. So I think this was a depth piece. I don't necessarily think it's an issue. I think Justin Herbert is just fine. I'm not worried about that at all. But that was probably on the things that all went great and bad. That would be more towards the okay than good of today.
Yeah. Throw Tyler's question up there quick, because I know he just said he's got to run out of here. When in regards to McVay and the Rams, and McVay runs this every practice a little different, kind of how Brandon Staley has so far. I mean, we've seen a lot of different, today was all special teams, but we've seen a lot of different stuff that he's run. But so far, at least this year, since Stafford's been there, the ones have gotten a lot of reps on the Rams. When I was there on Tuesday, they literally ran an hour of 11 on 11 team session. And I want to say the first team had probably 30 to 40 reps. Like, so they were repping hard and often. And that's not to say, and that was a day after, Matthew Stafford jammed his thumb on a helmet and everyone thought he was going to be out for a while. Then he comes and throws the ball 150 times in practice. So, that is a little different than what I saw not last year. I would say no one was at camp, but 2 years ago. So maybe it's just because he has a new quarterback, McVay's doing that. But I think with Staley right now, he's just trying to really get a feel of his entire team, whereas McVay kind of knows what he has from like the 2s and stuff. He wants to get a feel for his quarterback. So, but yeah, so far they have been very different in that regard this year.
So we've talked about Justin Herbert. We've talked about special teams. On the good side, we talked about Derwin James. We've talked about Asante Samuel Jr.
And Dan, real quick, let me just comment on Herbert real quick. Because I had said something too on Twitter that to me, all of camp, he has seemed a little bit off. And I just want to not people read on Twitter and they think off means bad. He does not look bad. There is in me. You asked the question at the beginning. For me, I have 0 level of concern. I think it's totally fine. But just the timing has been off. It's not like I've mentioned it before. Sometimes when on little like not a full bootleg, but the little like quick like boots and pass, instead of setting his feet, he'll do like a jump pass when he doesn't need to do that. Set your feet, get the rock good. You're not going to overthrow it. So just little timing, little nuances that will just take, they still have 3 weeks of practices left to clean stuff up. So a little bit off doesn't mean he looks bad, but to me, he's missed every practice, at least 1 or 2 throws where you're like, usually makes those. So that's just what I meant by that. And then we can move on.
One of the fun things, and Jake, you and I think we're split on which side of the field you're looking at during this play. I don't know, Ryan, if you saw it. It was probably about halfway through all of kind of like the position drills before they got into team drills. And I look over and I'm watching kind of the offensive lineman. I actually went over there so I can get some video for folks. And I see Joey Bosa go up against Brian Bulaga. And I'm like, oh, cool, this should be good. And Joey Bosa absolutely truck sticks, decleats Brian Bulaga. Like, I think he may have heard of like, oh, Joey Bosa didn't do well against Rashawn Slater and Paz, and just like use it as fuel. I have never seen Bulaga go down that hard with Joey Bosa. I was like, woo. And the whole crowd, it's funny, the whole crowd there was like oohing and awing the entire time. And half the people probably saw it, half the people heard everybody ooh and awe, and then they looked over.
I was the half that heard everybody ooh and awe because my focus was over here to the offense running or the wide receivers running their drills, and then all of a sudden I hear everyone react, and I'm like, what happened? And then Dan tells me what happened. I'm like, oh, damn, I missed it.
Where's the video replay?
Exactly.
Someone has to. I'm sure they're going to play it. Let's see. What else? We got a question. Yeah. I know, right? First time back in pads, and he just gets leveled pancake.
Yeah, come on. Give the guy a break. Give the guy a break. Come on.
Okay, so we got a question here from MH. He feels something like a question, but he feels that we need a cornerback and a safety, and he has no confidence in Faison or Nasir. Now, there's a lot here, but I'm going to start this off with just the generic question. And Ryan, let's start with you first. Do you have confidence in this safety group as is, given what you've seen so far?
1,000%. And that's not necessarily full confidence in Nasir, but that's full confidence in the rotation, in the scheme, and in what they're going to do. We're going to see Chris Harris back there a lot. We're going to see ASJ back there a lot, whether he's on the outside or as a safety. There's just going to be so much movement and so many different looks that as a group, as the defensive back group, as we've called them many times, Brandon Staley does not have corners or safeties. He has defensive backs. So we just don't want to pigeonhole. We need a new guy. We need a replacement for Nasir. We need a replacement for Faison because there's 7 guys back there and they're all going to rotate around and all move differently. So I honestly feel very confident in the group they have. I think Nasir, hopefully we'll see develop like we've wanted him to since he was drafted at Delaware. I think Faison honestly has looked good in camp. I know a lot of Chargers fans do not want him playing and they're upset. But remember, I said this on my show many times about just NFL players. You have superstars, you have stars, and you have budding stars. At this level, everyone is freaking good. Everyone's talented. And a lot of it comes down to scheme fits and groupings and where you actually mesh with your coach on the same page. Some players are very good. They're just in the wrong scheme, the wrong system. They don't fit well. It's trying to put a round, whatever they call round post in a square peg or whatever.
Square peg in a round hole.
There we go. Thank you. So it's just they're not fitting well, and maybe Brandon Faison just didn't fit in a cover 3 Gus Bradley system. And I think we'll see him with his size, with his speed, with his physicality, with his athleticism fit very, very well in this Brandon Staley, Ronaldo Hill system. Now, again, we're 8 days into camp. He did not practice today. I don't know if it was just a scheduled off day or if he was banged up a little bit, but so we need to see more. But for all those people that are very concerned about that, just know we could see a very different Brandon Faison this year. And again, I'll compare to the Rams. Last year, going into the season, everyone was concerned about Troy Hill and Darius Williams being your other 2 corners outside of Jalen Ramsey, and both dudes balled out. Troy Hill got paid by Cleveland. Darius Williams got a first-round tender by the Rams. So don't be shocked at all if all of a sudden Brandon Faison is like this new coming of a player. I'm not saying it's a guarantee. We could still have some setbacks, but everyone needs to temper back the concern a little bit because I think as a group, these DBs, I feel good about. And
Jake, I wanted to ask you this because you had a great kind of point of view on Brandon Faison when you were talking last on Chargers Unleashed. Everybody was talking about Faison. They were saying, oh, he's getting burned, and he's not good. And your take was very interesting on what you thought the reasoning for Faison kind of getting thrown out there and just like putting in work immediately. So answer the question, how worried are you about this corner/safety group? And why do you think Faison is just being put out there with the best?
I'll answer the first part of the question very quickly. Do I think it's possible that the Chargers could add another body to this defensive back group before week 1? Yeah, I think it's possible. You never know who's going to become available before the beginning of the regular season, and they should have their ears to the ground for something like that. However, I will say this. After hearing about what's been taking place in practices and watching it, and especially seeing the emergence of Mark Webb in the first week of practice, my concern level has dramatically dropped. And as far as Faison's aspect goes, everybody was questioning it. Why is he in there with the ones on the first day of practice? Why is he the one getting it? And I understand why, because the proof is that what we've seen from Brandon Faison during the regular season over the last couple of years has not been the best. So I don't hold it against people who want to think down on him for that, because he traditionally hasn't performed well. But this was my take on it. if we were to look at this cornerback classes the Chargers currently house in Mike Davis, Asante Samuel Jr., Chris Harris, Ryan Smith, and now Brian Faison, there's no argument that Brandon Faison's the weak link out of that group when you're talking about overall talent and what they're good at. Yes. So to me, I felt this was very much of a coaching tactic. And Ryan, I would love your input on this, because this I felt was specifically a Brandon Staley type of a move, because they brought him back quickly after they released him just before free agency really kicked off. Brandon Staley talked about how he raved about, his physical capabilities, his athleticism. To me, if I'm Brandon Staley, and I look at this from a 5,000 foot view, and I look at the cornerback who may have the biggest weakness out of all 5 of my guys, I want to find out what those weaknesses are. And I want to put him in there against the best that's on that team so I can see and so I could work him and develop him to be a little bit better. And on a flip note, if I'm Brandon Faison, traditionally, I wouldn't have been expecting to be thrown in there with the ones, because you have your Mike Davis that just got a huge contract. You have your rookie that was just signed to come in and fill huge holes for this defensive back group. And now just as a little bit of a confidence booster for yourself as a player to say, oh, damn, I'm lining up across from Keenan. I'm lining up across from Mike Williams right now. If anything, it goes a two-way street. Brandon Staley gets to see the weaknesses that Brandon Faison can work on and can develop him moving forward. And for Brandon Faison, I can give him a little bit of confidence going forward to work on those aspects. So that was my take on it. That's why I believed it happened. Again, do I see Brandon Faison taking over the starting mantles of either Mike Davis or Asante Samuel Jr.? No, I don't. I still believe that his ceiling is as a reserve, but if Brandon Staley can develop him as a better reserve so that the drop-off is not so bad when either Mike Davis or Asante Samuel Jr. comes out of the game, then he's doing his job in that circumstance. So it's player development. It's player development and making your guys more versatile and multi-positional.
Oh, that's such a great point, Jake. Like, you hit it spot on. And remember, fans, that well done. Remember, fans, Brandon Staley was a defensive coordinator last year for the Rams. He wasn't watching Chargers football. I mean, they played, if I'm not mistaken, they played the Rams again in preseason last year. But outside of that, before he got here, he wasn't watching much Chargers ball. So he's not, obviously now that he's been hired, he's looking back at film and seeing what players did. But he doesn't have the same maybe mindset of what Brandon Faison did as what we all saw, because he's looking at it from a different light, looking at, okay, how can I make him better? And so, yeah, he wants to put him in those positions in camp to say, let's stress test this. How can we do against ones? How can we do if he comes in here and does this and does that? And what can we improve upon? Because that's what training camp's for. If he had his roster set on day 8 of training camp, then he wouldn't be a very good coach. If he's like, okay, here's my 22 starters, we're set. All the rest of you guys, we'll see you in preseason, see if you can make this team as a camp body. So the fact that he's, testing different things, tweaking things, that's what you want to see. And lastly, I just want to say to your point, Jake, about potentially adding a body, one team to keep an eye on, and I know they're a division rival. So
and here we go with this. Yeah,
I know it's a division rival, and
Broncos.
Obviously you're not going to trade within the division, but the Broncos, yes. Ronaldo Hill from the Broncos is their defensive coordinator. Brandon Staley from the Broncos, then the Rams. Now he's here. The Broncos currently have 19 defensive backs on their roster. 19. They drafted 2 this year. They have an all-pro safety.
They signed 10 in free agency. So, that makes perfect sense.
So they have.
By the way, Patrick Surtain. I mean, come on. Let's go.
They have a stacked room in defensive backs. So there's going to be some good defensive backs cut that either played with Ronaldo Hill and Brandon Staley, or potentially were drafted this year, so they still have very young, high stock. So definitely keep an eye on that if they want to add another body, because they're going to have a pick of some solid players from the Denver Broncos. And if they can snatch one from a division rival, it's kind of a win.
We're going to get into Josh Palmer's route running and Mike Williams day-to-day. Zach Alfers, shout out fellow LA Football Network writer, has a question about the running back position. And Jake, I'm actually curious what your thoughts on this. We didn't see much running back work in terms of running today, but do you feel there's an early pole position for RB3 on lock between Kelly or Roundtree? And is it Kelly or Roundtree that are fighting for RB3?
If there's any advantage that Roundtree has right now over Kelly, it's definitely in the dancing department.
Yes, talk about it.
Certain, because right when they were getting done with their morning usual stretches, right before practice broke, everybody was in a half circle, and all of a sudden Roundtree comes to the middle of the circle and literally just starts breaking everybody down, doing this whole dance move type thing, and then they went right to practice. So I think he's got an advantage there. But in terms of the depth chart right now, I really haven't seen much that's separating one guy from the other. Really, I haven't. We came into this, Dan, after talking about our positional breakdowns. I personally felt it was going to be Roundtree for a number of different reasons. I just thought that he was a little bit more of a complete back. He had a much better production in college. I think that especially from this coaching regime being the one to draft him. And again, it's not a knock on Joshua Kelly, but sometimes you kind of favor your players a little bit like that when a new regime comes in. So you always have to look at those aspects of it. But in truth, I haven't seen much to separate one from the other between Roundtree and Kelly right now. And more so or less, again, like you said, we didn't see much of the running game today. So today was definitely not a day to try making any assumptions beyond Justin Jackson about what this running back stable looks like.
And I know I'm in the minority here, so people can throw shade at me all they want, but I personally don't think Justin Jackson's a lock for the number 2. That's just me. I know how good he can be in space when he's healthy, but this offense with Joe Lombardi's sprinkled in scheme, these running backs are going to have to catch the ball to the backfield, and Justin Jackson can do that. But from what I've seen in camp is he's almost looked in camp so far has not looked as good as Kelly or Roundtree catching the ball in the backfield. And in this system, what you'll see a lot is not just the backs catching it from their normal position. We're going to see them in the slot and in the outside running actual routes like receivers. They did a drill on Tuesday right after I tweeted something like that, where they legit were going against linebackers as an outside or a slot positioning, not like lined up behind center. So that's going to be, to me, the huge deciding factor on if they release one, if they keep 4, or who truly is that 2, 3, 4 position grouping. So for me, outside of Austin Eckler, I think it's all pretty still even playing field. And Kelly and Roundtree to me have looked better catching the ball. I know Justin Jackson is like the fan favorite for that, but that's just my 2 cents.
Now, Jake, Dancing with the Stars. Who would win, Roundtree or Eckler?
Ask me this question when Roundtree puts one in the end zone, because Eckler has earned that right now. So it's his mantle. Someone wants to take him up on that dancing aspect. Let's see what happens when Roundtree puts one in the end zone and what type of dance he does.
Let's go. All right. So Ryan, I am 100% disagreeing with you.
Good.
Justin Jackson is definitely RB2. And I think I said this last year when you were talking about Justin Jackson before I got hurt, Jake. And I recently was listening to a podcast, and Daniel Popper was mentioning that Justin Jackson just moves in a different way than other people do. I think Daniel Popper mentioned that he moves kind of like a Le'Veon Bell type in terms of his playing style, and he's very patient. And in terms of just being dynamic, you want to get folks that can make plays. And Joshua Kelly and Larry Roundtree, both of them, like, they are good at what they do when called upon. But Justin Jackson, I think, is that playmaker where if something happened to Eckler, if Justin Jackson is on RB2, like, this team has no playmakers that can chunk plays for 40 yards. In my opinion, Justin Jackson is, again, as long as he can stay healthy, which that's hard to say because he rarely is healthy, or at least lately. The COVID thing was kind of a fluke thing, but anyways, he's back. Justin Jackson, I'm a big Justin Jackson fan. Do I think he's going to be with this team long-term? I don't know. That's hard. I don't think so, but we'll see. All right, let's talk about wide receivers for a bit. A few days ago, bunch of smoke, bunch of conversations about Mike Williams running routes. Everybody was questioning lots of things. Josh Palmer was out there. Keenan Allen's looking great. Got Joe Reed not really doing much when he's called upon. He's looking good. Jason Moore. Honestly, I like Jason Moore's physique. He looks good. I feel bad that that Josh Palmer was selected, because that was like kind of his calling card. Was the position
he's in the wrong position this year.
Yeah, yep.
It's just a log jam.
Jake, what did you see from Josh Palmer today? And were you impressed with Mike Williams today?
First question. So when you guys were tweeting out, Ryan, specifically you, especially over the first few practices, just talking about the ladder drill and just watching Palmer's footwork.
Dude,
I could see it from the video that you covered, but seeing it live today, it just looks like the guy is just moving through it. You could put a blindfold on him and he still looks just as comfortable doing it like that. It just looked absolutely effortless. And then seeing him out there running his routes, I mean, it was pretty much just wash, rinse, repeat for him. He just looks great, looks smooth, just looks like he's already getting such a grip of this offense. And he is going to thrive so well in whether he's going on the outside or are they going to have him inside and they're going to use his footwork to his advantage to cause separation from other defenders. He looks fantastic.
Yeah, speaking of Dancing with the Stars, I mean, there's your candidate right there.
Holy crap.
Yeah.
Yep. So, yeah, Josh Palmer looks good. And you don't expect a guy coming out of college to have the NFL body week one. Josh Palmer looks the part. Guys that big don't typically have the footwork that he has. That is very rare. And for all the times that folks were wondering why the heck are we picking this random guy out of Tennessee in round 3, like, I think, again, it's early, but I think he's answering that pretty substantially. Now, Mike Williams, on the other hand, again, going into contract year, getting paid a lot of money. Folks are expecting big things from him. Today, looked pretty good. Does he have as quick a feet as a Josh Palmer or Keenan Allen? No. Put him in 11 on 11, 7 on 7. He created separation against every defender today. I don't think he dropped one. Mike Williams looked really good today. His hands were sticky, got separation. I thought he looked good today. Ryan, did you see anything from him?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's looked fine most of camp. Obviously, I didn't see him today, but, he's not your footwork, not your great route runner. We know what he is. I think that's how you would say it, Dan. We know exactly what he is, so just let him go do it. I think where the frustration a little bit for me comes from, a guy that now is making $15 million this year needs to be able to run more than 3 routes and, do different things on the field to stretch it other than just, what you're going to get out of him, which is a seam route and go up and get it. Because you're not going to get 75 catches on seam routes. Like, you got to be able to do some different things to your arsenal. But he is very good at what he does do. And so in camp, in those, he's not going to wow you in his individual drills like that, but he's going to wow you in those 11 on 11s when you get the jump ball and exactly what you want him to do. So we've talked about this before, I think with both of you guys actually, that if he has a great year, which by our standards, I think is like 60 plus catches, I still don't think the Chargers will pay him over that $15 million, which he's on the tag right now. So either way, you're going to pay a guy that with his skill set less than what he probably now thinks he deserves because of what he's getting this year. So it'll be interesting. We're getting way ahead of ourselves, but briefly answer your question. Yeah, I think he's looked fine in camp. I think he's looked good. He's just not, we know he's not what he isn't. And we thought he could become that and he hasn't. So at this point, 5 years in, we know exactly what he's going to do, which is just going to be a jump ball guy.
That was a mind hurdle. I was trying to follow along. I'm like, man,
he's not what he is.
Just rolled it off the tongue.
That's your second thing that you have to get printed on a shirt, Ryan.
There we go.
Hot takes and cold beer, and now he's not what he isn't.
Yeah, there we go.
I don't know if either of you...
I'm like the Henry David Thoreau of podcast.
I don't know if either of you two know what this means, but Cade McDougal posted, chill WCat,
I don't know.
Maybe know what that means?
Is it like an OnlyFans reference?
Uh-oh.
I don't know.
I'm going to leave that right there. I will say today we did see Mike Williams in the middle of the field. He was not doing jump balls nearly as much as he was doing those shorter routes that I think people are wanting to see more. So overall, Mike Williams, Josh Palmer, Keenan Allen, everyone, the wide receiver group looks good. We didn't see T. Billy out there today. He's still injured, nursing something. But overall, wide receivers looked good. Question for you, Jake. Another one comes in. I'm going to not even try to pronounce this name because I'm terrible with names. Has anyone seen Nas take reps at corner? And are you comfortable with him playing corner or safety?
I mean, I haven't personally seen Nasir on any corner reps. I think I've heard about it in prior practices. Ryan, have you seen anything like this from him?
I've definitely seen him in like the slot, being like the nickel back, or the star or money, depending if they're doing dime packages. So if people want to translate that as corner, then I guess technically kind of. But yeah, like we've said many times, and we'll say it again, these defensive backs will be all over the place. So yeah, I think Nas will play quote unquote some corner. We'll be back deep as safety. We'll play in the box. So
that's what I was going to say. It's hard for me to say, like, has he played corner? I have seen Nasir Adderley play deep. I have seen Nasir Adderley play in the box. And I've seen him play out wide. Whether or not he's actually playing corner or disguise or whatever, like, honestly, I have no idea. Like, that's kind of the joy of seeing a Brandon Staley-led defense. But he has played what looks like corner position, definitely.
Yeah.
So, we talked about all kinds of things. We talked about the bad of special teams. We talked about the good of some other topics. Has there been any glaring topics? I know we're coming up on an hour here. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you have questions or topics, please put them in the comments. We will go ahead and do a kind of a live Q&A here as we kind of wrap this thing up. Jake, were there any live takeaways that you saw today or things that maybe surprised you being at training camp live and in person?
I didn't get a good vantage point of the offensive line today. That's one I wish I would have, Dan. I know you walked over to that side to watch them a little bit more closely. And again, I haven't really heard much about, their one-on-one reps. I didn't really hear a lot of things coming out as far as them winning a lot of their battles. Obviously, the big one was between Bosa and Bulaga today, but nothing that was the caliber of Rashawn Slater just a couple days ago when he just owned everyone on the defensive line. But again, this is still that period where the pads are coming on. They're still gelling as a unit. They're still adjusting. So not too worried about that there. That's going to come within time. Surprising. No, I wouldn't say anything that was surprising. Well, no, probably, yeah. The fact that practice was 70% special teams work today. Yeah, that was probably surprising.
How about Donald Parham just towering over everyone?
Dude.
He is all of 6'8".
Yo. The videos of Shane Day talking about the combination of Cook and Parham is not to be understated in what you can do in red zone situations with two guys that are that big. It's just nuts.
Ryan, I didn't get a chance. I don't know, Jake, if you did get a chance to see like the post-game or post-practice press conference was with the folks that were at the podium. Any takeaways, anything surprising come from there?
I wouldn't think anything surprising. Just, Joe Lombardi talking a little bit about the offense and then just him kind of oohing and wowing over what the secondary is doing, specifically in Derwin James. But yeah, I wouldn't say anything surprising. It was just, pretty generic. But anytime your OC talks that highly of a defensive player, because they don't do that very often, you don't like to give kudos to the other side of the ball, even though it is your own team, you're competing out there. So when you see an offensive coach gushing about a defensive player, and we all know how good Derwin can be, that's usually a good sign. So that's all. That was my only takeaway, really.
Sweet. Yeah, honestly, there weren't many key takeaways today that we haven't already discussed. Like the main ones I had were Asante balled out. Josh Palmer's footwork's incredible. Justin Herbert wasn't 100%, but he was far from bad. This defense looks very, very good. The twos on defense actually looked awesome. The defensive line, I think it was Cortez Broughton. I put a thing on Twitter.
My guy Tez.
Yeah, he looked good today. And surprisingly, the second string offensive line, both tackles were looking good today in that group. So I was pleasantly surprised with how well they looked. Zach Alfers has a question. This should be a fun one. Most talented player on this roster who will not make the 53-man roster. Most talented player to not make the 53-man roster.
Oh, man.
I mean, it may sound cliche, and maybe I'm being a little partial here because I really think that he's a great player for this team. That's Steven Anderson. You can totally make the case 100% that the Chargers could keep 4 tight ends on this roster, and personally, I think they should because I think each one of them brings such a different aspect to the game. Steven Anderson is just such a great player that just really hasn't gotten a full-fledged opportunity for himself. I know we saw it late in the season last year, but even outside of a tight end, his contributions on special teams are great. So I would hate to see him be the odd man out if he didn't end up being on this roster.
Right.
That's a good one.
The floor is yours.
Yeah, that's a good one. And yeah, I think it's definitely a possibility they do keep 4 tight ends. So hopefully he is a guy that is kept around, because we've seen him do some good things in practice too, on wheel routes and stuff out of the backfield. For me, I'll stick with offense. I'm gonna go with KJ Hill. And I know he's a 7th round pick, so a lot of people are like, well, that's not like super talented. But when you are the leading receiver at the Ohio State University, you're a talented player. You're pretty good at what you do. And I am bummed that he did not do more last year, whatever you want to say about the other coaching staff, but it's still his job to get out there and get reps when he can. And then just from what we've seen so far in practice this year, 8 practices in, I don't see him as one of the 6, because I think they'll keep 6, maybe 7 receivers, but very unlikely. I would assume it's probably in that 6 range. And I think right now he is one of the odd man out. So he'll probably find himself on another roster if he doesn't make it through the practice squad. But for me right now, he would be a talented guy that I don't see making it right now.
Man, this is going to pain me to say, because I do not want this to be the case. And I never in a million years thought that this would be the answer to this question. But if it were to be made right now, the decision of who wouldn't be missing the cut, oh, this hurts. I think in terms of talent, I think it would have to be Joe Reed. And it sucks. And I do not want to say that, because I love what Joe Reed brings, or the potential of what Joe Reed brings. But so far, again, as of whatever it is, day 8 in training camp, you just don't see him that much. And if you're going off of your eyes, like, the guy we know has talent, but we're not seeing on the field, at least not in any team perspective. So I love Joe Reed, but as of right now, I think if I had to take a guess at who the most athletic one would be that's going to miss it, it's probably going to be Joe Reed. I got another question here. This is a fun one. Asante Samuel Jr. Let's fast forward. I think it's week 3, I believe, that we're playing the Chiefs. Who on the Chiefs will Asante Samuel be covering? Is it going to be Kelsey? No. Is it going to be Tyreek Hill? Is it going to be McCole Harmon? Who do you guys think?
I think. Go ahead, Ryan.
No, you go ahead.
Okay.
No,
I think Mike Davis still covers Tyreek Hill, because I still think he's the faster guy. You're talking about a guy who runs, strangely enough, for a guy that's as big as he is, 4.34 speed. I think Asante Samuel Jr. ran 4.45 on his 40, if I remember correctly. But yeah, that sounds about right to me. I know it makes sense just looking at it from a faraway view for both of those guys to match up a guy like Tyreek Hill and Asante Samuel Jr. And personally, I would love to see it. If I end up being completely wrong on this guess, I would love to see that matchup, because I think that would be an absolute dogfight if Asante Samuel Jr. is able to keep up with him. But say what you will about Mike Davis in the past and his wins and losses against Tyreek Hill, but he has been the one consistent thus far, especially when you looked at last year when the Chargers had Casey Hayward. He was the guy who was responsible for covering Tyreek Hill. So I don't foresee that to change by the time week 3 rolls around. But hey, I would love to be proved wrong in that circumstance and have Asante Samuel Jr. and Tyreek Hill battle it out for the better part of an hour.
Ryan, I will say this. I would love to see it. The only time I would want to see Asante Samuel Jr. actually covering Tyreek Hill is if he has help over the top. If it's underneath, I'm good. I think he is just as quick, if not quicker, as Tyreek Hill. But fast, I worry about him being one-on-one. I don't see that going well if they're trying to just run a 60-yard go route. I love Asante Samuel Jr., but that's not what he does best. Ryan, would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, Cheetah just has a different speed, different level. So, especially in week 3, this early on, I really personally don't see many of this secondary having specific assignments. I think they'll move around a lot. Even with the Rams last year, outside of Jalen Ramsey, who's Jalen Ramsey, as great as Asante Samuel can be, he's not Jalen Ramsey right now. So we saw Jalen Ramsey, basically lock down DK and he was a guy that actually floated around with specific receivers, but the rest of the unit kind of, moved all over the place. So I know fans love to see that, like, oh, mano, who's going to be man on man, but I think we'll see. It'll be a different mix of depending on what the play call is, depending on what the personnel package is, depending on what the blitz package is going to be. I don't think he'll be, okay, he's going to cover Tyreek 80% of the time, but if there were one, and if he is that advanced by week 3 and he is the starting corner outside of Mike Davis, it makes the most sense. But yeah, I agree with you, Dan. I don't think you want him just going step for step down the sideline unless you have Derwin or someone over the top.
All right. We are closing out our live recap of day 8 of Chargers training camp. We got a question here from someone who's asking about the depth piece of our offensive line, is asking about newly signed draft pick Brandon Hymus. Today, I can tell you, I saw him get roasted. I don't know if that's any other days. But today I saw him get absolutely obliterated by Cortez Broughton. I think I have a video up on my Twitter at Chargers Homer. Check it out. But honestly, I haven't seen much of him other than that. So this is not me poo-pooing on him. It's the only play I saw that I was focusing on him and saw it. Either you guys see that?
Yeah, well, they were in pads today, right?
Yep,
they were.
So the Chargers have had a practice and a half in pads. So it's impossible to grade offensive linemen with a practice and a half in pads because you can't block on t-shirts. So I haven't seen enough to even really comment. I don't want to say anything good or bad. He seems to be learning the system and he seems to be in the right place where he needs to be. So that's a good thing.
Rookie. He's a rookie.
Yeah.
It's going to take him a while, especially at offensive line. Jake, would you agree?
I would.
Okay. Okay. So we have Brandon Staley on this team as a coach. And obviously this defense is at a whole nother level. JD number 3. I'm curious who number 2 or 1 is. JD number 3 says, it seems as though Brandon Staley's defense has won 8 of the 9 practices over the offense of this team. Do you think Coach Staley should put more emphasis, I'm paraphrasing, on the offense? Do you think, 1, that the defense has been that much better than offense? And 2, do you think Brandon Staley needs to put more attention to the offense?
I mean, I don't think it's as big of a gap as everyone thinks it is. Yes, and we talked about this the first day of practice. Use the term more as like the defense won today, or but really since then, I felt like it's been a much more even battle. Now, was today a good day for the offense? No, not so much. The defense won today, but I don't feel it's as dramatic through just over a week of practices now that to say that the defense is just owning the offense. I don't believe that that's it. Justin Herbert had an inconsistent day today. I don't think that Staley's taking away any of his responsibilities and putting more of his attention on the defense than the offense. I think it's a number of different things. And to Ryan's point, how about offensive line being one of them? They've barely had any time in practice thus far. If you go all the way back to when they weren't in pads last week, yeah, you're going to have a tough time blocking a guy who's running straight forward at you and nothing but a t-shirt and nothing to grab onto. So from perception wise, yeah, it's going to look bad. So just give it time. We're still talking about a brand new coaching staff that has virtually been overhauled in a year, haven't even played a preseason game yet. And you're talking about an offensive line that has 4/5 of its starters from last year, brand new. Just give it time.
Yeah, and 2 points I would say is Staley has been with every grouping. He's made a point at every practice that I've been at to be a part of every grouping, whether it's in the individuals or during team being on the offensive side. So he definitely has taken a notice of that. But more importantly, I would be much more concerned right now if the offense was owning the defense. So I think it's very normal. Any training camp, you're installing a new offense. I know they're installing a new defense too, but it just takes more time for the offense to click because it's timing stuff. It's not like they don't know the playbook. It's timing, getting on the same page as each other, having that cerebral, just being able to snap the ball and know where Keenan's going to be, know where Mike's going to be, know where all these guys are going to be. So I'd be much more concerned if the offense was 8-1, as the comments said, against the defense. So I think I'm not concerned about any of it right now.
And we'll close it out on this topic, and there's nobody more qualified or has more perspective than a Ryan Dyrud on this question. And folks, again, thank you so much for all your comments, questions. These have been a blast. We've actually gone through quite a bit today. This has been fun. All right, so Ryan, you have seen Brandon Staley and you have seen Jalen Ramsey up close and personal with the Rams. You now see Derwin James and Brandon Staley together. Do you see Derwin having a Jalen Ramsey role or being a game day chess piece? This is a question from Angelia. I like the way I like that spelling. I hope I pronounced it right. If not, I'm sorry.
Sounded good. Yes. I'll just answer that to both. Staley has said many times since he came here that he sees Derwin as a Jalen Ramsey type player. So there's your answer there. And as a game day chess piece, that's kind of, I guess, the same in a sense, because Ramsey was in a sense a game day chess piece also. So when we talked about ASJ covering Tyreek Hill, and that's because I believe Derwin James will be on Travis Kelce, as we all saw even in the years past, but he'll be the same this year. So yes, Derwin James will absolutely have a Jalen Ramsey-like role. And in that sense, he will be used as a chess piece wherever they see fit to do the most damage to opposing offenses.
All right, Ryan. Jake, we're getting one more question in here. This is a quick one. And I think I know your answer on this one. Has the deep passing game been impacted by T. Billy and Guyton sitting out? More reliance on
the short
tight ends?
answer is yes. The short answer is yes. Absolutely 100%. Yes.
Today, Jake, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think we saw one deep completion. There were a few that were bobbled. I didn't see one deep completion for more than
there
20
were a
yards.
few that were bobbled. There were a few that were overthrown. But as far as coming down with them, no, I didn't happen to catch any. So, yeah, it wasn't the Tyron Johnson show out there with him being out of practice. Definitely wasn't that. So to his second question, has there been more reliance on the tight ends? Yeah, I felt that they got a lot of good work today for the way that they were coming out. But yeah, nothing big time down the field this time.
Yep.
Short, succinct. Yep, I like that. Guys, we are...
I can comment more if you want. I can always talk more. But...
No, you're good. Succinct. We are closing out Day 8 live recap of Chargers training camp. It is August 6th. It's Friday. Friday. We're about to celebrate with some Brewery X here tonight, guys.
Boom.
Have you guys had Jake, have you had the NAR yet?
The what?
I forgot you haven't had the NAR yet. Next time we go to Brewery X. So
is this one of the ones that you guys picked up during your last trip there?
It was, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So there's the NAR, which is an IPA. I want to say it's a hazy IPA that we got to try last time that Ryan and I were there for our live show. It is so good. For folks who have not been to Brewery X up in Anaheim, you are missing out. They've got all kinds of beers, seltzers, great food. Ryan, what did we have? Like a buffalo pizza? Or we had what was the other one we had last time we were there?
The
one that we left in the car.
We had some crazy one that had like giant pineapple slices, and I don't know, you ordered it, but it was great.
I would order it because I like pineapple on pizza. So yeah, for folks who are looking for a great time, Brewery X up Anaheim, check them out. They're also in Bevmo. They're also in Wine and Spirits, you name it. Awesome shop. We're gonna be doing lots of live shows there coming up later on this preseason and also into the 2021 season. Check them out. Great friends of the show. Until next time, that is going to do it for this episode of Live Training Camp Recap. Ryan, thank you so much for joining us. This has been I can't say blast anymore. Now that I've noticed it, I can't say it anymore. This has been so fun.
The norm. It's just the norm.
So refreshing. What are you doing this weekend, Ryan?
A lot of work and covering football and the norm. Raising a child, nothing crazy exciting. Hopefully making it to Fan Fest, but we'll see. Yeah, should be fun. Another weekend.
Jake,
all the days are the same.
Nothing.
You get it. Are you allowed to?
That. There's been an emphasis on this weekend to do nothing.
Are you allowed to leave the cellar on the weekend?
Dude, I leave the cellar every day. When I work remote, I work in the cellar. It's my place of peace. Just to my right, I have ESPN on right here. It's my place of peace. It's my zen. I get to do the podcast with you guys.
The bars are right behind where the camera is right now.
Yeah. So when you get fed, though, do they have to open like the slot?
Let the cat out of the bag and stuff.
At least we're not pulling the cat's tail and they're not meowing everywhere like they were last time.
There you go.
I'll take that. That's lavender. For Ryan Dyrud for LA Football Network, you can find Ryan at Ryan Dyrud LAFB. For Jake Hefner, you can find him on Twitter at Jake T Hefner. Myself at Chargers Homer on Twitter. You can follow us at LAC_Unleashed. Be sure to subscribe on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. And until next time, this is Chargers Unleashed. Thank you so much for joining us. We will do this next time on Chargers Unleashed. Talk to you later, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Have a great weekend.